Have you ever heard someone say, video games just aren't fun anymore? They don't make them like they used to. I just haven't enjoyed video games in the same way as I did when I was a kid. Sometimes I sit down to play a game and just can't decide on which game to play. There was something different about that time. Things have changed. I spend more time watching videos about video games than actually playing video games. You got old, man. You grew up. I think a lot of people have been thinking these kinds of things over the past few years. But it's crazy to think that we're more spoiled for choice than we've ever been when it comes to video games. There are more games than ever. Games are visually more impressive, more striking. Games make more money now than they ever have. So why do people not find them as fun as they used to? Why have you clicked this video? Perhaps you are also thinking the same thing. And if I'm being honest, I've seen a lot of these videos pop up over the past year or so on YouTube, talking about why gaming just isn't the same as it used to be. Talking about how nowadays gaming is littered with microtransactions, with battle royales, with season passes, and it's very rare we actually just get a good video game.
It's been 84 years.
I think a lot of people make the argument that all of this is to blame, that it's not you, it's the video gaming industry. The industry has changed, and I kind of agree with that in some ways, but I think there's more to it than that. However, today I'd like to present an argument which I haven't seen anywhere else on YouTube, and this of course is also related to Star Wars. Me playing a lot of Star Wars games, making videos mostly about Star Wars and Star Wars games, and why it feels like it's been such a long time since we've had a string of good Star Wars video games. It's not like the mid-2000s, man, where they're just releasing 5 Star Wars games a year and things were incredible. The golden age of Star Wars gaming, as some say. This, however, I think applies to all of gaming. I think I'm just using Star Wars as an example because it's so obviously clear, not only what's going on in Star Wars as a whole at the moment, but more specifically with Star Wars gaming, where it feels like we get one good game, one maybe not as good game, and the cycle continues. So recently I've been playing both the Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare re-release and also Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. And there's something I think both these games have done exceptionally well, one being from, 14 years ago and one being from 2024. And that is achieving this idea of fantasy-fulfilling dumb fun. Let's start with Undead Nightmare. Red Dead Redemption released in 2010 as a serious entry into Rockstar's already impressive gaming catalog.
I'm gonna hand you over to him and watch him tear you limb from limb. What? I'm just kidding.
This was their first real exploration into the open world setting with the Wild West, and immediately went down as one of the most iconic video games in history. But what soon followed, just a few short months later, was something I think no one expected, and that was the Undead Nightmare, a standalone DLC game set in the world of Red Dead Redemption, except it's being overrun with zombies. And what I'm trying to point out here is that Red Dead Redemption itself is a very serious video game. The story, the plotline, very dark. And so Rockstar, having created that, a few months later, then decided to also release a completely hilarious and honestly really good zombie game. Set in an alternate timeline of Red Dead Redemption where zombies come out of the ground and start killing people and overrunning towns. It's wild stuff. A lot of people are still disappointed we don't have a Red Dead Redemption 2 Undead Nightmare DLC, that never released for the sequel. But it's such a crazy video game title because it feels so out of left field. It's so random. Like I said, Red Dead, the original, is one of the most iconic video games of all time, and Rockstar also just decided to make this parody, ridiculous zombie game alongside it. Why would they do such a thing? I'll tell you why. Because it's fun. And I feel like sometimes when you hear people talking about video games nowadays and how they don't enjoy them anymore, it's because we're not necessarily getting a lot of stuff like this. A dumb fun game that was literally just made for the hell of it, but it is still backed up with incredible combat, physics, mechanics, world exploration, lore, storytelling, and so much more. Take the Revenge of the Sith video game, for example. A lot of people necessarily don't know that this game also has an alternate non-canon ending where you can play as Anakin and kill Obi-Wan in their duel on Mustafar, also killing the Emperor in a cutscene and becoming the supreme leader of the galaxy.
No, the galaxy belongs to me.
It's such a fun thing to do in a video game because it's, in a way, fantasy fulfilling. It's escapism. It's going into this world and playing through a scenario that doesn't exist elsewhere. Does it matter that it doesn't fit into the main Star Wars canon? Of course not. Who cares? It's in a game. It's supposed to be an alternate ending. The most extreme example of this is also from a DLC, some of the wildest DLC you'll possibly ever play, the DLC packs for The Force Unleashed 1 and 2. In The Force Unleashed 1, you not only get to battle against Luke and turn him to to the dark side, but you can also kill Obi-Wan. And then Obi-Wan's Force Ghost comes and attacks you straight after that, and you're gonna kill the Force Ghost as well. It's so ridiculous, but it's so much fun.
So uncivilized.
I have to go back and play these one day. Leave a like if you'd like to see that. In The Force Unleashed 2, you can literally go and kill Chewbacca, Han Solo, and Princess Leia. Everyone's childhood heroes, and you can go and kill them. Yes, this was the pre-Disney era. Yes, they didn't really care about seeing characters that everyone knows and loves get slaughtered and murdered on screen, as they probably do now, seeing as though no one seems to die in Star Wars anymore. But it was so much fun. Now, the reason I also bring up Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is because I feel like this is an example of a modern game which achieves these things. Yes, Dragon Ball is obviously heavily nostalgia based. It's relying on you having enjoyed Dragon Ball when you were younger, and then the largest portion of its audience relies on people having watched Dragon Ball in the 90s and 2000s, growing up with it, loving it,
Incredible.
and then returning to the franchise 20 or 30 years later with these styles of games. But at the same time, I think most people who have played this game will agree. It also sets an example of how much fun random combat scenarios, which never happened in the movies or the show, can be.
If I beat you, I'll be expecting 1,000 more milk bottle deliveries.
And makes a point of doing so with some of the dialogue interactions the characters have that have never even seen each other on screen.
Prince Vegeta, you mean to fight against me?
A low class like you should be honored to spar with a super elite like me.
It's small details like this, a little bit of fan service, fantasy fulfilling stuff, which is then backed up by impressive gameplay mechanics and polished game design that makes this kind of experience so much fun. And I think, in my personal opinion, this is something gaming needs more of nowadays.
I'll show you the difference between a low-born amateur and an elite warrior like me.
Now, I'm also not trying to say there's no place for new games, because yes, of course, Sparking Zero is based on the Tenkaichi series. It's basically Dragon Ball Tenkaichi 4, and is heavily reliant on nostalgia for its player base. And I'm not trying to fix this feeling people have about gaming overall. Yes, there's so much more to it. Like I said, yes, it's partly your age, it's partly game mechanics, it's partly modern gaming, the state of modern gaming, it's the price of gaming, it's the styles of games that are being made and supported. Example, Fortnite, example, Call of Duty, and that games like these, which might feel really stale to some people, are still dominating the overall gaming scene. It's a much broader picture with a lot more elements being pieced into it than I can get across to you, I think, in one video. But all I'm trying to say in this piece is that these elements of games that are just kind of dumb, fun things that are added for the sake of it, where developers have clearly gone to the extra effort and gone out of their way to make these things so much more fun than they ever had to be, is what I think is missing in some modern video games. Even though people didn't connect with LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga in the same way they did as with the Complete Saga, I really appreciated the fact the developers not only added more characters that we'd ever seen in any other LEGO Star Wars game, but also added a bunch of fun extras we could play with, like Mumble Mode, which allowed you to experience the entire story and game with mumbles and grunts, just like we had in the Complete Saga. It's a little bit of fan service, a little bit of nostalgia, sprinkled in with some good gameplay mechanics, with a modern game and setting that makes this fun. I love video games. I still love playing video games. At no point do I think games aren't fun anymore. There's so much fun to have in gaming right now, as much as there ever has been. And I think gaming still has a really bright future. Sometimes I will agree, it feels like all of the iconic games were made maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. But then you have to think they were only iconic because you were around then. For people who are younger and just getting into gaming over the past few years, the games that are being released now are those games for them. They are those iconic games they're growing up with, enjoying, and building strong memories with, that they're also probably going to look back on in 10, 15, 20 years with fond memories and be like, man, that was a great time for gaming. Why aren't games like that anymore? And the circle is now complete. It's like poetry, it rhymes.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.